So thank you very much for having me here. It's great to hear stories from around the world in different places, people doing great work. And I'm here today to be talking a little bit about the Etc., which is a program, a preschool program that we've been working on more or less the past 6 years. So New Haven Leon is a binational organization, has an office here in New Haven and one in Leon, Nicaragua. And we've been around since 1984. And we started just because some folks went down to Nicaragua and heard from Nicaraguans a request to start sister city projects to support hospitals and schools in Nicaragua. And so we've been going since. But our mission is really about social justice. We're not really happy that there's this poverty in this country or poverty anywhere in the world, and we want people to understand the root causes of that, and that's part of our work. So Nicaragua is an impoverished country. There's a long history with the Spanish, U.S. intervention, a long dictatorship, and dictatorships are a disaster. Dictator, instead of putting tax money into roads and schools, you have that's just basically theft. It's corruption. If you compare Costa Rica next door and Nicaragua, the only difference where Costa Rica is pretty much a middle-class country, Nicaragua is so impoverished. The difference is a long dictatorship in Nicaragua basically stole all the resources and mismanagement. And so last point on here is about the grade level accomplishments for students. The educational system in Nicaragua is pretty weak. There's not a lot of resources. It's interesting. The Nicaraguan government, compared to other Central American governments, invests a lot more in university education and less in primary education. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but compared to El Salvador and Guatemala, there's a lot more investment in those countries than there is in Nicaragua in primary education. So some of the work we do is around sustainable development. We want to be long-term, rooted in the community. We send down delegations, interns from universities here, from synagogues, churches, any group that wants to go down. We're sending down a women's delegation this year, a teacher's delegation. And as I mentioned, we work for social justice. So we were invited to kind of move out of Leon and begin to work in rural communities in about 2002 because the state government noticed that this one community of Guyana was really struggling to recover from Hurricane Mitch. And Hurricane Mitch struck in 1998. It was a devastating hurricane. It dumped a ton of rain, flooded out this community of Guyana. They were displaced. And so we were invited in. And 1998 was one of the hottest years on record. So it was definitely a stronger storm because of climate change, changes in the climate. So I might have time later mention a little more about this, but climate change is a very much of a concern of ours. So there's a typical first grade or second grade classroom, very much a lot of overcrowding in Nicaragua, but as you all know, the investment in youth and education is critical for development of countries. So we have a number of educational programs. We have an after-school program that tries to fill in the gaps from the very formal day school. And we do a lot of interactive activities. We try to include workshops on the environment, on gender, and there's a lot more work to do on that, but it's a program that runs from about 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. each day and has a food component also. We work a lot with leadership development. We're really trying to decrease our staff footprint in Guyana. We want more and more any program we're working with to be run by people in Guyana. So even though they may not have the resources to have the after-school program run all by people in Guyana, the preschool, all Guyana people, women's program run by Guyana people. So even though we may provide technical support from our Leon staff, professional staff, that the programs more and more are totally run by local folks. We have a youth brigade, and these are teenagers that go out and learn about environmental and public health issues, and then go back and teach their peers, teach adults, teach children about them. We have a theater program that looks at using theater to understand conflicts and resolving conflicts, both here in the US and in Nicaragua. And as Lori already talked about, we have a women's rights and gender program. And so much of what I'm talking about today is the preschool program, and the needs there in Nicaragua are pretty, as I said, there's not a lot of investment in rural education. So even simplest, when we first started looking at the preschool program, not a lot of materials in the preschool as far as crayons or activities or things to do. Teacher pay was really, really low, like $30 a month. The Ministry of Education, the main government body, the ministries in charge of these programs, has very little investment. The classrooms, if there is a classroom, are not really weak. And the pressures of poverty. I'm not talking to a group that understands the pressures on children of poverty, so I don't say much about that. So we started the preschool program, really focused on the preschool program. And our 25th anniversary, we raised money. We raised about $15,000. And we had a discussion with the staff in Nicaragua and with the board up here and some educators up here and decided if we focus on education, where would we invest this money? And the consensus was to invest in preschool. That at that age, the kids' minds and bodies are developing. That's really important to start early with that. So we decided to spend about $3,000 a year over 5 years to really improve the preschool program in Guyana. And actually in this picture you'll see Marta Oseja, who's the founder of the preschool, and she is still working as a teacher, the head teacher. And she started the preschool when she was 16, and she just saw the need and started organizing classes and schools and people's homes and moved from house to house to house as there was space available. And she traveled to other schools to learn how to run a preschool, how to be a teacher, and kind of self-taught. And then eventually another NGO, a sister NGO, built the preschool, and we've been much more involved with the preschool since. But it's really, this preschool is very much rooted in the community and very much in Marta's. So here's some, some of the the results of the investment in materials and in training. We've been seeing some of those results. And as you get more materials, teachers are more excited, they have more things to do. The parents see the children more engaged. Teacher training really helps. If you're a teacher in a classroom and you're frustrated, it's horrible. And when you have tools and learn new skills, you get to show those off and practice those. The attendance is better, the parents are more involved. One of the jobs of our staff persons is to really work with the parents, to get the parents more involved. And again, part of the parents' involvement for us is also to advocate for the Ministry of Education to invest more. So right now, the Ministry of Education is more interested in Guyana. They're now paying one of the 2 preschool teachers a full regular salary, which is still minimal, and she's getting more education from the government. So we're also seeing more youth going to college, which is part of an ongoing, we have a preschool program, after-school program, and do youth support. So in the community, people are saying for the first time, students going to college. It's interesting, the picture on the upper left is of Marta Osejo and her 2 kids. And Marta's the teacher I mentioned, very bright, very committed. And speaking of the program Lori talked about as far as women's rights, Marta said, before I went to this women's rights program, like I used to teach kids in preschool that the boys would play with trucks and that kind of thing, and the girls would play with dolls. And I also, she taught her own 2 kids, and pictured, I tell my boy that, he should, he'd go out and play, but the girl had to help around the house. So for us, like for my 2 cents, as a little sidebar from my 2 cents, like the women's program is great. Like it's just so wonderful because most of the people we work with are women. The teachers, the community leaders, the social workers, it's almost all women. So the more power they have, the more self-awareness, the much better for the future of the community. So we started to, with some help from DCI, look at expanding our preschool program, taking what we learned about work in Guyana and look at a neighboring community of Trujillo, which had a very under-resourced, pretty weak preschool program, and going to work with them. And part of that desire comes out of an interest in pressuring, again, I'm saying it over and over again, but to pressure the government to take responsibility for educating their children. They want to put the resources someplace else, but they need to be pushed to take care of their children. And so Guyana's parents alone is a very small group of people. But together with Trujillo, another neighboring community of Abangasca, you have a few hundred parents who potentially could really pressure the government to do more for children. So what we've been doing so far is, expanding teacher training about classroom management, different activities they can do, working with parents. The materials thing is really critical. Better record keeping, tracking attendance, tracking how the students are doing, measuring their progress, so you can look back and see how you can improve the education. Again, involving the parents in the school, so the parents are involved in cleaning, planting trees, cooking lunch as part of the meal program. And upcoming, we're hoping to do more trainings. We have a couple delegations going down this year for professional teachers from the US to offer trainings. We work with trainers from Nicaragua. there's some of the things like, well, some of the simple things we did in Guyana is the classroom was one big long space. And if you're a preschool teacher trying to manage a couple groups, it's chaos. And so putting in a simple divider made a huge difference. It was probably a $500 investment, but it makes a huge difference. And so on the bottom right are the 3 teachers who are the women who are committed to making this happen. I mean, what we do is tiny, but they're there every day and working and going to school, trying to learn more, really interested in learning more, but very committed, and they all travel long distances to get there. And so what's the future for all this? One of the goals is to continue, as I mentioned, increase the capacity in the community so these programs are run by the people there, that they can make the changes. Outside support is needed, economically. The people in the community, a lot of the people work in sugarcane. They get paid about $1,000 a year, which on the U.S. scale is probably equivalent to making about $3,000. So in New Haven, and if you lived in New Haven and made $3,000, you'd probably find a shack someplace and just spend your money on clothing and food. That's basically with the reality in Nicaragua, and I'm sure many other places. It's really tight. So we'd love for the programming somehow to find local money, but that's not something we're seeing necessarily. It would be great to have a 0 to 3 program to really get in at age 0 up to 3 with nutrition and making sure the kids have the right kind of stimulation at that age. It's such a critical age. There's a talk here at Yale by a representative from the World Bank who talked about dollar for dollar. That age group is where you can really have a big impact. So we'd love to do that. Again, it's probably about resources to make that happen. Salaries for the teachers, like Marta gets a very low salary. She has a lot of pressures on her in her life. So how can we keep her, all of her training and commitment in this work? We'd like to create a sister program with other preschools in New Haven and Connecticut to get them potentially fundraising to support different preschools we work with. And of course, incorporate gender issues and emotional literacy in the curriculum. And I guess the last thing I just want to say is we're doing a lot of work in New Haven around climate change. And that comes somewhat out of the impact of the Hurricane Mitch, but the threats of droughts and hurricanes in Nicaragua is really intense. The nasty hurricane that just hit Mexico yesterday, extremely strong. It's very scary. So I know you all are involved in really good work, but I think it's really important we communicate with our board members, with our staff here in the U.S. I'm talking about in the U.S. because we're the one doing greenhouse gas pollution. And talk about your donors and say, look, this is important. This is going to undermine, this climate change is threatening to undermine the work we're doing. And the more we can tell people about that, encourage them to act now. There's so much great stuff to do for more alternative transportation, biking, solar panels, wind turbines. It's all good stuff. We just need to push on that now. So that's a real concern for us. If anybody wants more information on any of that, check out our website. But I'm happy to talk to you about it afterwards. But thank you very much.